Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lizak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. I'm tuning in from Moline this week, David, visiting my parents. So I'm not in my normal scene, but not in the normal studio. But what's new with you?
No problem. Yeah, all good here. Just been busy this week with our new product launch and two segment, and just everything's just been a little crazy because of that. We're trying to run BDEX and now two segment on top of it. It's going to get a little crazy for a while.
Awesome. I love that. Well, two segment is pretty cool. Should we take a quick second? Do you want to explain anything about it or share any more about it?
Yeah, we can talk quick about it. To quickly summarize, two segment is essentially a platform for Shopify users right now, but we'll expand it over time. Essentially, it is a platform for helping to improve segmentation for retargeting for e-commerce sites. And so we're using data enrichment and AI analysis to enrich customer profiles, then use AI to analyze those profiles, do personality analysis, for example, and then the AI suggests custom segmentation for that to help improve performance of your retargeting efforts. And so far, so good. It's working pretty well.
That's awesome. Yes, I can't wait to see and hear from some of the customers who get to hear it. You, of course, know who I'm thinking of. Just want to hear what people have to say. But today on Deconstructing Data, we're not going to be really focusing too much on Shopify, but maybe, who knows, we might be talking more about attribution, though, because we're excited to welcome on Cimin Ahmadi Cohen. She's the founder and CEO of Idea Peddler, and she's an award-winning independent advertising agency, and she's an adjunct professor of advanced media at Texas State. She spent the last several years studying what she calls the attribution illusion, which I think is fitting, but the growing gap between what brands think is driving results and what's actually happening. So welcome to the show, Cimin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Cimin, we're excited to jump into this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. But we'd love for you to kick it off for us first. Give our viewers and listeners a little opportunity to get to know you a little bit, and how you came to start Idea Peddler and what you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, my background is in media. It has always been in media. I studied at the University of Texas at Austin. I got my bachelor's degree in advertising and went straight into big agency from there. Went up to Chicago, got to work on brands like Kraft and Best Buy and Microsoft. I did a couple of years on the ad tech side and got really into digital, programmatic, mobile, launched the Women Wireless chapter in Chicago, and then served as Mobile Center of Excellence for Mindshare and Starcom, and helped launch Microsoft's first B2B programmatic campaign. And then in 2014, I left big agency and started Idea Peddler with a focus on bringing the best of those innovative big agency best practices to mid-market brands, and Idea Peddler was born. So today we're fortunate to be filled with a team of innovative creatives and media strategists and provide full service creative and media to luxury tourism and hospitality brands, as well as financial and advocacy marketing companies. So that's a little bit about us.
That's awesome. That's some journey. You've definitely built a lot of experience, and we look forward to learning from that experience today in this conversation. And would love for you to sort of kick us off on this first topic, the attribution illusion, explained. So explain it to us.
Sure. We also needed it explained because we saw kind of a lot of anomalies in the system. And as you all know, being in ad tech, there was kind of this explosion of ROAS being used to measure success, almost myopically so. But then we noticed a couple of years ago, there stopped being a correlation between ROAS and the business outcomes. So how that played out is, in environments where attribution was being measured, that return on ad spend was going up and up and up, and business outcomes would remain flat or even down in some cases. And as we would say, the maths weren't mathing. We couldn't make sense of how return on ad spend could go up and not have the business revenues truly go up. And really, it was a confluence of events. We also saw that data providers who are providing a lot of these attribution data through panels, their panel data sizes were getting cut in half. So they were taking really small sample sizes and getting even smaller, looking at 1% or less of audiences. For example, for mobile geolocation data, those footfall numbers were falling to 1% of actual visitation. So it was kind of getting hard to make sound decisions off of some of that data. And then from our own research and study, not even research, just practical, ads in market, we were doing log file transfer matches. And those match rates were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Around that same time, the multiplier effect was published by WARC. And that was kind of the first time that we started to say, okay, maybe there is a reason behind all of these things happening at once. What the multiplier effect did in publishing that data around effectiveness, taking 30 plus years of ad effectiveness studies and finding that audience segmentation was one of the smallest drivers of brand growth and profitability as compared to overall channel allocation or geographic allocation and creative. So we thought maybe there's something going on here larger. So we actually hired a New York Times investigative journalist to come in and help put all of this together. We kind of turned over all of our first party research and started to give her some leads and directional information about where to turn. And the Attribution Illusion was born.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we talk a lot on the show about attribution and sort of the many different factors that come into play with respect to different platforms and sort of everybody sort of wanting to take credit for the attribution. And so how that can, when you're looking at your overall attribution, it can really distort things, right? And so you have, X number of people that, converted and, Y number of people that converted when you look at it across all the different platforms. And so they're getting double counted, triple counted, whatever. And so we've always seen that from our perspective as being sort of the illusion, right? In the sense that you never really knew where the attribution, who really was responsible for that attribution because there were so many different places claiming responsibility for it. And it's interesting what you said earlier also about just the measurement and the sort of anomalies that can occur in measurement as well. And a lot of that, we wrote when it comes to ROAS, we wrote a white paper several years ago about the effects of ad fraud and just removing a number, the bots and click farms and the IDs that are related or linked directly to this ad fraud, how a simple change like that, if you could do it, you were able to improve your return on ad spend. Today, you still have the same problem. Like we wrote this white paper in 2017, and we built a graph based on that idea that if we remove all of these bad IDs and remove the bad actors, then we can concentrate on targeting real people, and we can, build a graph that only links to real people. But our graph isn't deployed in every platform, and so because of that, you have this inherent problem where you're measuring your ROAS against a seed of real people and bots, which are, affecting the outcomes. I'd love to sort of get your take on how all of these different things are sort of playing into this illusion.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention the bots, because that is, as we started to do this, and I'll talk about the kind of outcomes of the attribution illusion, the fast follow-on white paper has to be around bots and kind of data internet theory. So we are of like mind in that way, that the two can't really be separated here because it is such a problem. So kind of the three things that were the big takeaways around the attribution illusion was what we call suspicious segments. So really, we talked a little bit about how brands and marketers have so much on their plates now. Not only all the paid media channels, all the organic channels, all the owned channels, managing all the data segments, managing AI now. And what was kind of quietly happening in the background was state by state online privacy legislation and regulation that really changed the landscape of what one-to-one matching could look like, what those audience segments could be built on, and that really when you looked at the data, there's a massive drop off in the actual match rate that you can glean depending on your data source and your data provider. So our first party research with CM360, we saw match rates go from 75% down to 25% in a 2-year period of time. What that should tell us is, kind of alarm bells going off where Google, who is, the world's largest digital ad revenue generator with $400 billion in ad generated globally, if Campaign Manager 360 is having that hard of a time with match rates when they have all the data in the world at their fingertips, that there are many, many providers out there who, when they say they're doing a segment and precision targeting segment, you should ask deeper questions about where they're getting that data, how they're verifying that, and what they do when that data can't be matched. It's become very easy to just say, okay, I want to have a precision audience targeting, reaching luxury travelers who are interested in an African safari, and just trust that the vendor on the other side of the table is delivering that audience. But what we're finding is that actually that is being, there's only a fraction of the audience that can be measured in that way, which has always been the case. And everything else is getting filled in with filler and fluff data, whether that's bots or whether that's just kind of generic lookalike that gets stuffed in. We call it kind of a junk food problem of the ad industry, is that it's getting filled up with segments that don't really convert. The other big takeaway that we found is this vanishing signal, which you mentioned. I think a lot of us knew that the single source walled garden grading of homework was not accurate. It was overly inflated, but also, that it's not driving brand growth, that it's actually patchwork of answers, and relying on any one of those single data sources has really potentially negative consequences to the brand over the long term. So what used to work and what kind of used to be the truth around things like Meta and Google, the precision targeting of finding lookalikes there, that used to be an infrastructure that existed and worked, but there's been just such degradation in data mapping through a lot of the changes, largely driven, I think we all remember the iOS 14 update, largely driven by that, but as well as these privacy legislations that have made that signal very, very hard to find in reality. And then the last is that there's this like phantom privacy reality that people needed kind of just a gut check to, that you can't trust every data provider and every media vendor, that they are abiding by the laws and regulations of mobile geolocation. I think most famously, Uber Media was covered in a Fast Company article before they went bankrupt, or maybe around that time, and before they were bought out of bankruptcy, where they were kind of out and out not on the right side of the law with PII and mobile geolocation data. That is getting an increasingly large percent of audiences that are moving through locations that we cannot track them. Things like, I think some of your other guests have talked about this before, but things like healthcare environments. We're seeing entire states, Oregon and Vermont, ban the sale of mobile geolocation data. And so it really is incumbent upon the advertiser and the agency to be asking these kinds of questions about, are we truly privacy compliant in everything that we're doing? The reason that matters now more than ever is because we are also seeing legislation come with consequences, and there being real financial pain that brands are experiencing. Sephora, most notably, that we talk about in the Attribution Illusion, had more than $1 million fine for not being in compliance with privacy laws. So those are kind of the big 3 takeaways that we dive into in depth in there, and share some of the background so that people can get up to speed. And like I said, it's just, there's so much happening in data privacy compliance and ad tech in this space that we wanted to just consolidate it and put it into one place for people if they have, 20 minutes to read through the attribution and get up to speed on what's happening and the right kinds of questions to ask about data and privacy, as well as what alternatives exist to be able to more accurately go reach audiences that will convert and have a more holistic measurement approach to how your campaigns are doing and what to do to actually scale success versus only trying to convert demand that was already going to happen as opposed to driving future demand and growth.
Yeah, you make some really good points, and specifically when you mention iOS 14, when Apple introduced their ATT, ask not to track technology, that created a lot of problems for a lot of people when it comes to targeting. And you can no longer target those people. But another problem that sort of exists is how it sort of blows up your reach statistics, because what happens is those when someone asks not to be tracked, their mobile ID refreshes, and they get a temporary one, and they get another temporary one, and they get another temporary one. And so what happens is you end up having many IDs linked to a single consumer, but none of them are addressable. And they end up getting categorized, because what happens is if someone's on a web page or in an app or whatever, and that app shares or sells that data, they can say, oh, well, here's a mobile ID, and that user is interested in gambling because they use this gambling website or this gambling app. Well, guess what? That mobile ad ID is never addressable again, but it gets put into that audience. And so now you have this audience that looks like it's 10 million people that you can target that are using whatever that gambling app is. But the reality is there's a very small percentage of them that actually allowed the app to track that has a mobile ID that can actually be targeted. And so now you have this big audience and you're only reaching a very small portion of it, but the ad servers don't realize that. So they're building a campaign based on this audience being 10 million people, but they're not actually able to reach all 10 million people. So what do? They do exactly what you said. They start filling it in with other, with more generic users. And so now you lose sort of the targeting that you thought you had, when you were trying to reach those users. It's very problematic. And it's something that we're proud of on our side at BDEX, is because we've built technology that actually identifies these temporary IDs and removes them from audiences. But there's a lot of, off-the-shelf audiences out there within, all of the, you name the ad tech platform, on those platforms that are filled with these IDs. And so you think you're reaching a specific audience, but you're really not. You're reaching a small percentage of that audience.
Yeah, and kudos to you guys for removing them. We talked to a mobile geolocation data broker, and I won't name them because I give them a lot of credit for also cleaning this up, but we were talking about the drop in panel data volume, and they were showing me the data they were getting back from these data brokers where, say, for example, you had an event, and that event happened on June 11th last year, and then it happened on June 9th the year before. They would have the event look day by day the exact same, and they found these anomalies when an event date would move to see that the cluster of people that were supposed to be in that location were there at times that they shouldn't have been there. So what was happening is that basically because these mobile IDs were not trackable, or they were kind of brand new over time, they were losing that volume of data. So the data broker just decided to keep copying and pasting year over year data and selling it as though the volume maintained, or things like hotspots where they would just aggregate in all the mobile geolocation to one area, and it looks like an exact perfect circle, which if you know lat longs, that doesn't happen. And so I give them a lot of credit for cleaning that kind of stuff out, but there are so many bits of bad data out there. And the problem is it's really complex. You have to care a lot. It's far easier to paper over the problems and just trust that the data is being handled by somebody. There's really not a lot of people in advertising on the marketing or agency side whose job it is to be in the weeds of these data segments. I was talking to somebody for a very big retail brand the other day at a very big holding company, and this woman was in charge of programmatic. And I said to her, like, yeah, but match rates programmatically lately, huh? And she kind of just blinked and said, I don't know, I haven't checked that. So there's a lot on everybody's plate, but it's just such an important part of overall long-term brand success and short-term brand success that you be mindful about really what data you're buying, and is it accurate? Is it legal? And is it actually driving growth for your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I could stay on this topic forever, but I want to make sure we get the rest of our topics included in this episode. So talk to us, and AI. This is a really interesting one because everyone's talking about AI making media decisions going forward, and I'm really interested in getting your take on AI scaling bad media decisions.
Yeah, I remain a little bit suspicious until proven otherwise that AI is going to be a panacea for ad targeting problems. We all know the rule of garbage in, garbage out. So if, as we just talked about, a lot of the data is stuffed with filler data, that just doesn't scale. Like, we know that the high quality data is hard to scale. And so agentic being brought in to scale bad data feels like the most likely outcome over the next 24 to 36 months. Data privacy continuing to come in and regulate will probably make this worse, but it sounds really good to say that we have agentic AI taking the bad human data decisions out. As I mentioned, with Google's lack, we all know, we've all seen Google's inaccurate data targeting at different points in our careers. And so you have to ask yourself, if Google is still struggling with this, what is the likelihood that AI agents put on top of it is going to be solving this problem? So I would just assume that for the foreseeable future, data is no more accurate than just open inventory, maybe marginally so. And the exception to this, of course, would be within walled gardens. The problem with that is, so obviously the Metas, the Googles, I really think Amazon is another key player in this space, but Walmart's been making a big play with their Trade Desk integration and trying to get Walmart audiences to scale outside of the platform. I just don't know a lot of brands that can truly grow to scale on one single platform. And I'm not talking about growing to scale at $100 million in business. We've seen many, many brands do that in this space. Across just Meta or just Amazon or just Walmart. But when you're really talking about, enduring large enterprise brands, that can get on the radar of these large CPG companies to be purchased, or by these large corporate hospitality groups to be purchased, you need to be looking in the neighborhood of $400 or $500 million in order to get to $1 billion market cap. And that's where just solely relying on the digital rent of these, single walled garden environments, that's not going to scale. So yeah, trying to just put AI on top of it is probably not long for this world. We are, of course, testing it, and we're testing everything from AI search and Google AI Max and all of those kinds of different platforms, and testing that against our standard best practices to see, does it really drive more meaningful outcome? And again, when we do that, we're looking at what is the business outcome of that, as opposed to what is the platform telling us. So making sure that we have holistic measurement in place so that if and when AI can start to scale the small data segments that are really strong, that we have all that measurement in place to be able to recognize that, versus just be lost from the self-created homework of the platforms.
Yeah, it makes sense. I agree. I think that we're still really early on. I mean, everybody's talking about AI being in everything, and it is, but it's not, AI isn't the sort of, everything's not built on AI today. Today, AI is like a plugin for everything. And I think that's what's happening today in the ad tech space. It's sort of, they're just saying, okay, well, let's apply AI to it and we'll just sort of plug it in. And so I think that's the difference. And I think that we're still several years out before everything, I shouldn't say everything, but sure, until ad tech per se is built on AI. So it's AI first. When it's AI first and it can be tracked, at the individual level, it doesn't have to be, you go against any sort of privacy compliance. It could be 100% privacy compliant. The AI can actually learn, what are you clicking on? And it doesn't really need to know who you are. It just needs to know, what you're doing. But in order for that to happen, it really needs to be an AI first platform. It can't just be something that's plugged into it in order to be able to do that. And so I think it's still going to be some time until we have ad tech platforms that are AI first. And when they are, I kind of think that we will see improvements at that point, because the AI will be able to, learn and sort of see trends as they're happening instead of sort of after the fact right now.
I do worry, though, that as you said about the bots, I think we've seen with AI and, with Meta and with Google, their, Performance Max or Meta Audience Extension, we typically find that gets filled in with what we would mostly call garbage inventory and just not high quality stuff. And so for the short term, our hypothesis is that that's going to continue to be the case, that is done by AI, that is getting, being fed bad signal about who's clicking and the bot farms behind all of that stuff. So these media providers would have to have a lot more aligned incentives with the business growth to be able to clean that stuff out. You can understand why with Google, there's a very low incentive of getting rid of all the bot farms, because if that makes their numbers look better on a CPC basis, they get money, and that's how they keep growing. Same with Meta and the audience extension network. So it's just, today it is too easy for bad actors to go set up sites to run, made for advertising inventory and content on there, and collect those checks of agentic media buying. I know that doesn't sound very fun, or it's far easier to say like, oh, well, AI's got it handled, and the reality is, like, I don't trust that AI has a good ability to weed those that inventory out of the system, which is just total ad waste.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the platforms make money off of fraud, and so eliminating the bad actors, eliminating IDs that are linked to bots and click farms and all that is not exactly a high priority. So it's unfortunate. I think it's going to take some time and adoption. And it's honestly, it's probably gonna take the brands and the agencies sort of rebelling against the platforms that are allowing it. And I think over time, eventually, we may see improvement, but it's a slow adoption because they make too much money off of it, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, I'm curious, from your standpoint, being like so entrenched in data and data integrity, how much, like, what's the percent that you would say is kind of bad inventory or bot made for advertising, fraudulent inventory that either clicks or data profiles, like if you had to give a percent to kind of what you're seeing?
I think the best way for me to do that is give you an example. And so I had a client come to me recently with a known graph problem. They didn't know what the problem was. They just knew there was a problem with their graph. And they were more in the business of syndicating audiences. Okay. So building and syndicating audiences and then distributing those audiences. And obviously they want to make money off of those audiences. And the problem is that they don't have any control over the graph itself, right? So they build the audiences, but then they push those into a platform, and that platform, basically drives the usage of those audiences based on, campaign managers building a campaign and using those audiences. And so I can't speak to the amount of fraud per se, but I can speak to the amount of in their audiences, the amount of IDs that were not addressable because of Apple's ATT and Google's do not track. And because of that alone, we did analysis of their audiences, and 75% of their audiences were not addressable. 75%. And
that tracks exactly with what we've seen.
Yeah. So 75% of it is not addressable. So what happens in that case? It's exactly what you described. Someone says they want to use this audience. 75% of it isn't addressable. So what is the platform going to do? They're going to fill it with what you called garbage inventory. It's absolutely right. They're just going to try to fill the impressions. They need to fill those impressions. And so from, the problem that the audience company was dealing with is that they were seeing very low usage of their actual audience because everything else was getting accredited to some other inventory. And so they wanted to improve those audiences. And so we were able to help them identify all of those bad IDs, map all of their, all of the audiences to valid IDs, and then obviously improve the usage of their audiences. So that's one example of just bad data. The bots and click farms, that's a different story. We didn't do that analysis for these audiences just simply because that wasn't the role and our role in that task. But what I can tell you is that there's a significant volume, and I don't have the numbers. I'd have to look up what the numbers are. But we maintain sort of a blacklist of IDs, mobile IDs, hashed emails, IP addresses, all linked to bots and click farms. And that we are adding to that sort of blacklist by the hundreds of millions of IDs per month.
Hundreds of millions of IDs per month.
Yep. So that gives you an idea of just how much that's scaling. And I think that, that's obvious in the sense that, how else are they driving billions of dollars in click fraud, ad fraud, right? That's how. And so, that just gives you an idea of the scale of the problem.
Yeah, it's a big, scary problem if you are in control of a budget and responsible for delivering results on it. Sometimes I think it can feel more overwhelming than one person can manage at their desk in a day. And so, I think what we do is encourage people to take it kind of bit by bit. It's like the first step is acknowledging this is real. This isn't a nightmare. And to just try to start to do better bit by bit rather than thinking we're going to stop this overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Well, this has been a really great conversation because there's just a lot of alignment there with what both of our businesses do. But we still have one more topic and tech stack. So real quick, directional versus decision grade data. What could you share with us in just a few minutes on this, Cimin?
Yeah, sure. Really quickly, I will just say decision grade data, we stand firmly that should be at least 2 sources. So never taking a single source. Everyone grading their own homework will obviously give themselves A. So having some unbiased source, and what we mean by unbiased is some group that does not sell media. So not the agency, not the media vendor, not somebody who measures and is a media vendor, but truly independent source to measure this. That can be an MMM, but it can also just be either qual or quant studies so that we have 2 sources of information. And, we should be happy to put that money towards budget, whether that's 2 or 5% of the budget to start to plan to put that towards unbiased measurement. And then some of the other things that we would say for directional data, we've talked a little bit about lookalike data, but lookalike data can really be a black box. We don't know what's getting filled in there. So at least breaking out some of those lookalike audiences where you may have a hypothesis. We do this a lot with geography. We may have a Texas lookalike versus a California lookalike to start to be able to see, okay, we know that in Meta, for example, lookalikes are always going to outperform any other audience segment. Why is that? Because you can't take the lookalikes out of Meta and go target them somewhere else. So they kind of get to lock you in that way. But what we can do is start to say, okay, if we have Texas versus California as an example, or this high value customer versus this high value customer. That way we can start to see how those things are performing in the lookalike sphere against each other for more directional data to say, okay, this geography is driving more outcome than this geography or this segment, this product, this purchaser versus this segment. So if you're going to use those self-graded tools, use them directionally and set up hypotheses so that you're able to understand what the outcomes are as those come in. But for decision grade data, absolutely have a minimum of 2 sources. One of those sources can be some of those self-graded homeworks, but make sure that at least one of the other ones is a truly neutral third party.
It's great advice. Absolutely.
Anything you'd add to that, David? I know we talk about lookalike audiences or a lot.
Yeah, well, Cimin mentioned earlier about Meta's audience extension. I have a story about that, but I won't get into it because we're running out of time. But yes, the key is to be careful about them, because you don't know what that lookalike data is built on. That's to me, that's the most important thing. And I think that there are a lot of flaws in Meta's lookalike audiences, their audience extension or whatever the heck they call it these days. And we've experienced it with some of our clients. And doing some of the attribution that we do with our pixel, we were able to tell them exactly who they were targeting, and it was not the audience that they were trying to reach at all. They had it turned on, and that's the other thing, it's turned on by default. And so when you're building a campaign in Meta, I always challenge people to make sure you turn that off. And unless you want to create a separate campaign and have it on and do a comparison, but by default it's on. So you need to be careful because depending on who it is that you're trying to target, that audience extension could be pretty poor.
Absolutely. Well, we could probably have a whole episode just on that topic, but yeah, we need to hear about your tech stack for this episode, Cimin. So what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack that empower you and your team?
Yeah, I love this question. And it's funny because we are actually looking to unwind as much of our tech stack as we can and rebuild it ourselves in-house. Obviously, some of that stuff won't go away. We're Slack users, like many places. We're loving Gemini and Google Drive that facilitates business and layering this intelligence on top of everything that we have in our years and years of history to be able to kind of very quickly find answers to what's performing, what's not, watch outs. Using a lot of Claude, as I'm sure a lot of you are as well. We are using a tool called N8N to start to stitch together some of our agentic and automated workflow. We, of course, have ad platforms. And then for my mobile location intelligence, I am using Placer right now, which I also really love.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, definitely recognize some of those that you were mentioning. You mentioned N8N, so it looks like others have heard of that one too. So yeah, this was a great episode. Before we go though, would you like to let listeners know how they might be able to reach you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn at Idea Peddler. And gosh, my social handles, I'm sure Idea Peddler LLC, I think on Instagram. You can find me. I'm the only Cimin Ahmadi Cohen on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure. So you can find me there.
Awesome, Cimin. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot from you. I hope our listeners and viewers learned a lot as well. I think they did. Thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Such a valuable conversation. I'll go ahead and close us out with the outro video. We'll see you backstage, Cimin.
So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lizak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time.